When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about what was Oberyn's real master plan at King's Landing during a storm of swords. We're going to go through all of it. We're going to talk about what Doran wanted him to do, what Oberyn did actually end up doing, and what maybe isn't exactly there, but we can look at. There's a lot of theories that go into this video in terms of what Oberyn wanted to do, in terms of in Dorne when he got back, in terms of did he poison Tywin. We're going to go through all of it. Now, I'm not going to spend 20 minutes on each one of these theories. I don't have the time to do that. If you guys want to check that out, I've made videos on pretty much all this stuff. I've made a video on Oberyn killing Tywin possibly. I've made a video about possibly Dorne. And if Oberyn had survived, I've made videos like that before. This is really just going to be a compilation of all of it and putting it all together. So let's dive right into what Doran wanted Oberyn to do. He went beyond anything I asked of him. Take the measure of this boy king and his council, and make note of their strengths and weaknesses. I told him on the terrace. We were eating oranges. Find us friends, if there are any to be found. Learn what you can of Elya's end, but see that you do not provoke Lord Tywin unduly. Those were my words to him. Oberyn laughed and said, when have I provoked any man unduly? You would do better to warn the Lannisters against provoking me. He wanted justice for Elya, but he would not wait. So it tells us right away that Doran was looking for more of a recon mission, and when you have someone like Oberyn, that's never going to necessarily go right because Oberyn was too emotionally involved with things that were going on at King's Landing, and that makes him do certain actions. We know for certain that Oberyn goes over and beyond what Doran had actually wanted, but if everything had gone right, which very possibly could have if Oberyn had not let his emotion won and but the Mountain killing him because of his emotion, things could have gone very differently. So let's think about how Oberyn actually fulfilled Doran's plan in many different ways. He does do recon on the Lannisters and their council. He even gets promoted to certain positions. He is very much in a place to take a look at how the Lannisters-Tyrell alliance is doing and the weaknesses and strengths of both. He also does investigate the death of Elya. We see this both with his conversations with Tyrion and Tywin offering their side of things. Now, we know that Oberyn doesn't believe these things. He knows what actually happened, but he was doing what Doran wanted, trying to see what the Lannisters' explanation was going to be if he asked about Elya's death. And we even know that they were willing to at least give him certain things that Oberyn was not exactly happy with, like the news that say Lorch was dead already. That's not going to satisfy Oberyn, but Oberyn does fulfill that aspect of what Doran wanted. He then also seizes to get friends. He also tries to befriend Tyrion as an ally, seeing Tyrion as kind of like the black sheep of the Lannister family. He's also very clever. And even if you think about the actions that Tyrion took during the Blackwater, Tyrion would probably have a very good reputation with someone like Oberyn in terms of being intelligent, things of that nature. But unfortunately for Doran and Oberyn, Oberyn took his own personal liberties while in a storm of swords. He was much more provocative to Tywin and the Lannister faction than Doran had ever wanted. And that's not even saying, for instance, him going into the trial by combat or publicly saying all this stuff about Tywin. Even before then, Oberyn made it very clear he was not happy. He was very much looking for stuff into Elya's death, and also that he blamed Tywin and the Lannisters for her death. So in a lot of ways, Oberyn fulfilled certain things about what Doran wanted, but on the other side didn't. He also then publicly backed Tyrion in a trial by combat, putting his life at risk, something Doran never would have wanted him to do and very much backfires on him. And it also goes to paint Oberyn as being someone in direct competition with the Lannister power, because the Lannisters are openly sentencing in the Crown itself, Tyrion is guilty. And so Oberyn is basically rebelling against that. He publicly laid the blame of Elya's death at Tywin's feet during the trial by combat. And then the last two are, he then planned to crown Myrcella with Tyrion's help. We know this to be the case, that after the trial by combat, Oberyn was going to take Tyrion back to Dorne. And then lastly, we have to discuss this one, but he also might have poisoned Tywin. So you see that all of Oberyn's actions were, yes, fulfilling what Doran wanted, but also trying to destabilize everything that the Lannisters were trying to do. So let's go through the theory of Oberyn poisoned Tywin, because all the rest of the claims I've made so far, that's really all we're told in the Storm of Swords. It's more or less summarizing what we're told. But Oberyn poisoning Tywin, that's a theory we have to delve into a little bit harder. So the first thing I want to bring up, if you are Oberyn and you are openly basically suggesting to Tyrion that they should crown Myrcella, it tells you that Oberyn is very confident in the Dornish position. And I find this quite interesting. Given the Dornish do not have the men to oppose both the Tyrells and the Lannisters, why would Oberyn be making this claim? Is he just that arrogant? Does he believe, hey, we can win a defensive war? What is Oberyn really planning at this point? And so, one thing that I have thought of that makes a lot of sense is if Oberyn is already poisoning Tywin, or he's already planning to do so, it makes a lot of sense then, because Oberyn realizes the weakness to the Lannister regime is if Tywin dies. And think about it even further. Tyrion himself is very intelligent. He's like the next smartest person for the Lannister family. And you're bringing him into the Dornish. You're bringing him into a faction against the Lannister faction. And so if Tywin dies at any point, there's a glaring weakness between the Lannisters and the Tyrells because Cersei will undo all of that. Someone like Varys knew that quite clearly. So it makes a lot of sense in terms of, okay, just politically, and what Oberyn is trying to do, take down the Lannister regime, it makes so much sense from him. But also, we could look at it from this point of view as well. Oberyn could justify his actions to Doran by saying, well, he's getting justice for Elia. Tywin was the person behind the death of Elia and her children, and so Oberyn is getting justice for that. We know that he has that personal motivation against Tywin, publicly denouncing him during the trial by combat. We know that Oberyn had all the motivation to kill Tywin. And it goes even further than that as well. Because let's then look at Tywin's death. Of course, Tyrion is the one that actually kills him, but was Tywin already dying? Because when Tyrion hits him with a crossbow and he dies on the privy, it seems like Tywin was maybe having bowel issues. Now, we don't know if this was just some, regular, I need to go to the bathroom, middle of the night type scenario, or this was more. But based upon in A Feast for Crows, when we see Tywin's body is, it seems like smelling horrible, rotting very badly. And it's very unique because even though the Silent Sisters have prepared the body, have tried to make him smell better in terms of maybe the maesters and stuff like that, his body still smells horrible to the point where Tommen cannot even bear it. And so I look at this and I go, there's really only two ways, in my opinion, that you can look at this scenario. One of these is, okay, this is more of a metaphor from George saying that Tywin was this rotten to the core type of guy that this whole time people have thought of him as being this powerful man and all of this stuff. And now he's brought down by his own son, killed in the bathroom, also having Shay in his bed, something that Cersei has to cover up. And it's just more or less being symbolic. Or is it the fact that Oberyn poisons Tywin? And that's why his bowels, why his corpse smells so rotten. And the thing is, we'll never really know, probably, if this was the case. But I think it makes a lot of sense for Oberyn to do so. Oberyn's whole plans seems to revolve around the idea of Tywin's death. If Tywin is still alive, taking Tyrion to Dorne, crowning Myrcella, maybe it's just Oberyn using emotion. We see how emotion gets the best of Oberyn in his fight with the Mountain. But his plans would make so much more sense if Tywin was to die. So think about when we get into A Feast for Crows, it's a very different situation if Oberyn is alive and Tyrion is also alive, and they're then going to Dorne. Because the whole Dornish plotline would be very different. Because you'd see, again, the Tyrells, the Lannisters, they are now uneasy alliance. The Dornish, now having Tyrion, would have a really big into the way that Cersei thinks, how to play the game. But the thing that would come up would be, would Doran go for it? Because Doran, even in the same scenario, Tywin still dies. Doran is not willing to crown Myrcella. He's not willing to do all this stuff because he sends Quentyn then to go with Daenerys to try and get the Targaryens. And this would definitely counteract everything that Oberyn is trying to do. Oberyn is suggesting that they should crown Myrcella. Well, if they crown Myrcella, they also then can't back Daenerys. And so you run into a really interesting spot where were Oberyn and Doran disconnected on what was truly going on? Because at that point, it seems really weird because you have, not only is Oberyn trying to crown Myrcella, you then have young Griff who's going to come over, allegedly the child of Elia, which would be fascinating. It would be fascinating to see how Oberyn would react to young Griff. Because I think Oberyn, very intelligent, might even be able to sniff out that young Griff isn't actually Elia's child. That would be very fascinating because Oberyn could be a huge point in going, we shouldn't back this person in young Griff. I actually don't think that Arianne would even be sent to young Griff. I think it would be Oberyn. So in a lot of ways, I think Oberyn living and his whole plan becomes very convoluted as you get further into the story based upon what we know Doran's actions are. That's where I want to stop the video though, because At this point, if you go to Tyrion and Oberyn in Dorne, it also means that young Griff doesn't go to Westeros instantly. He still goes to Daenerys. How does that then change everything that goes down there? It's really interesting to try and figure it out. It's very fan fiction-y at this point. The Lannisters, their forces are all scattered everywhere. Opens a lot of doors. But let me know what you guys think about really Oberyn's master plan, what he was trying to accomplish, and do you guys think that Tywin actually was poisoned by Oberyn? But bye guys, I'll see you guys all in the next one.